Hello, and welcome to some Derps Talk About Games. I'm your host, Mango.
And I'm your host, Buddy.
And today we've got a special guest.
Hi, I'm Mark, everyone. Nice to meet you.
You might know Mark from such Derp Play Games adventures as Felox in Iron Gods, or the GM in Rise of the Rune Lords.
Or, coming soon, Dead Space 3 playthrough.
Okay, that too. Exclusive reveal here, folks. But anyway, before we have Mark on to talk about the Occult Adventures stuff, our special spooky Halloween episode. But before we launch into that, buddy, why don't you tell the listeners what we do on this podcast?
Well, it's pretty simple, Mango. We talk about games. This week we're going to be talking about the Occult Adventures source book that just got released for the Pathfinder RPG system. Really, I think we're going to focus on the classes and talk a little bit about the extra stuff that comes in a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, I don't mind just diving right into this bad boy. I guess the first question I have for you guys is, what is your favorite class in the Occult Adventures book?
Oh man, favorite class. That's a tough one. Well, with the recently released Splat book, which added a couple of different options in, I might have to say Kineticist, just because there's a phytokineticist now, and wood-themed adventurers are always my favorite.
Just to be clear, you're talking about the Occult Origins?
I believe it was in Occult Origins, yeah.
It's Occult Origins.
Yeah. But that's mostly because of the wood theme and not because of any real mechanical, stuff. And I think Mark also really likes Kineticist, right?
Yeah, I like all of the classes in Occult Adventures, but the Kineticist holds a near and dear place to my heart just because it's basically Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is pretty neat. But the others are all pretty solid. I just think, in particular, the ones that stand out as maybe less good are the Medium and Spiritualist, though.
Ooh, interesting! I don't know that I agree with that. I have a particular hard-on specifically for the Psychic. I actually think the Psychic is a tremendously well-designed class, and I really like that it sets a pattern for how Paizo is, approaching 9th level spellcasters and moving forward with them design-wise. First the Arcanist and then the Psychic, however month, I guess a year later, have both been really well-designed 9th level spellcasters, and I think that that's probably my favorite class coming into Occult Adventures.
Really?
Yeah, I mean...
What about the disciplines did you really like, or the frantic amplifications? Because I know you have a profound dislike, or distrust at the very least, for traditionally psionic kind of...
Well, yeah, I guess I'll get this one out of the way. I really, really dislike psionics as they were originally published in, D&D 3.5. I actually really didn't like psionics when they were published in 4th edition, which is kind of interesting because I liked a lot about what happened in 4th edition. I thought a lot of the kind of flavor of 4th edition was right on the money, but the psionics really just felt off. I thought in 3.5, the design with PowerPoints and everything, not that I've really paid attention or looked at the design since I've become an enlightened podcast host, I didn't necessarily think that the 3.5 design was really up there, and so I think in comparison, the psychic spells and, the frantic amplifications and the way that psychics cast their spells versus the way that, mesmerists cast their spells versus the way that, obviously all of the spellcasting classes in Occult Adventures do it was pretty well designed by comparison. And I think having psychic spells as its own unique category, independent of arcane and divine, was a good fundamental choice for how to set aside their magic.
Interesting.
Yeah. I actually think I agree with you. I think that the Psychic's actually very, very cool. I think some of the things you were alluding to with, the 9-level spellcasters, I like the leveled spellcasting and a lot of things, the ability to downcast things. I think that's really cool and, kind of, fits to, a standard of, letting power feel like it grows with the player without having to be, kind of pigeonholed by the fact that, Fireball's a level 3 spell, so it can only get so powerful. The idea of, a Fireball growing with your character, if you want your character to be a Fireball character, is a pretty cool thing, and that meta magic didn't really do that as much.
I would really like to see that actually kind of implemented on the whole for all spell lists. You know, I think you're alluding to the undercasting system, which is kind of funny because it was such a big thing in my head. But when you actually read the rule set, it's like 2 paragraphs at the tail end of one column. You know, really not all that much. But I think undercasting is a great system. And I think it's really well designed, especially for spontaneous casters, because it really frees up their spell lists. You know, the idea that a psychic can keep leveling up and, and popping Ego Whip or whatever it is, Mind Thrust into their top level spell slots so that their DPS is, hardcore. And at the same time, filling in those background slots with the more niche stuff, the more supportive stuff, because they don't necessarily, like when I'm getting my first, level 3, level 4 spell, all of a sudden my level 1 and my level 2 slots are a lot less, it's a lot less necessary for me to pump those slots full of DPS spells. And full of my, main bread and butter spells, and I can really open up in terms of flexibility. So I really think that system is great. I guess the other thing that I really enjoy about psychics is I thought all of the psychic disciplines were appropriately flavored. And they read a lot like Sorcerer Bloodlines to me. I'm a big fan of the Sorcerer Bloodlines. I think the Sorcerer Bloodlines are probably the best, class feature among the 9th level, the whole run of 9th level spellcasters. And so I thought it was really smart for them to basically just port over Bloodlines into these psychic disciplines.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree entirely. I think I'm a big fan of the psychic class. Honestly, I'm also actually, it's not strictly the class material from Occult Adventures, but I'm a big fan of the kind of flavor that they've been able to give to the existing classes with archetypes that kind of take from this occult stuff. Like, in your upcoming Hell's Rebels game, I was thinking about playing an investigator with psychic spells. And he gets 6 levels of the psychic spells, and that's pretty fantastic, right? It gives it...
to be completely honest, I actually kind of think I prefer that as base design over the investigator as
in what way?
Almost. I just really, really like the idea of the investigator being a psychically flavored class. I don't know. It's hard for me to explain how I feel about that.
I actually disagree. I think the investigator particularly works well with kind of whatever spell list you want to slap on it. The alchemist is really good for this traditional kind of smart guy who uses chemistry and all this other doohickeys to kind of discover and investigate. Whereas the psychic investigator, I feel, gives a very different flavor as far as like a more like Yu Yu Hakusho style character, which is really cool. But I think I think there's very few things the psychic spell casters do better than the arcane or divine, and I think it's really interesting. Like, I think the component change, it's to emotion and thought components, I think, and I thought that was a really interesting change just as far as the mechanics go.
To be honest, I actually think it's more of a quality of life change in a certain sense, because it's very RP focused, right? I feel like components as written for, arcane and divine are just kind of rules that don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's, unless you're going to shell out 5,000 gold or whatever to buy the spell components for Raised Dead, or, like whatever those kinds of components are, I feel like most of the time they're just kind of throwaway, right? You don't really interact with them.
I feel like that's true for material components, but I think somatic and verbal components have their time. And I think the emotional and the thought components are a good complement to that, because verbal and somatic, like they are various. They're about equal to disable. One's like a pin, one's like a silence effect of some sort. I think the emotional and thought components are also pretty cool, because one's like mind affecting effects, right, which are fairly common but not so common, right? And it's also a cool way to let your players kind of screw with the spellcaster, right? Like, those intimidate checks become so much more valuable if you've got an emotion-based spellcaster.
Yeah, that's definitely
as opposed
true.
to just a -2.
what I really mean is like it's easier to interact with the RP of an emotional component and a thought component than it is with the RP of a verbal component, a somatic component, right? You know what I mean? And I think that's a neat focus.
Okay.
Also, the other thing I wanted to mention, because this is really the core of what I think of when I think of these 9th level spellcasters being well designed. The base wizard really has no secondary stat to take, except for Dex, really, right? Because he's going to be making ranged touch attacks. So wizards should theoretically build, another physical stat, right? Should theoretically build intelligence and then physical stat, right? Con or Dex, right? Sorcerers are kind of the same thing. Clerics are a little bit different because they're wisdom and charisma and everything. And I really like that both the Arcanist and the Psychic are super focused on mental stats, right? Your Arcanist has to take intelligence and charisma. Those are his big power stats. And the same thing is true for Psychic some of the time. Sometimes it's wisdom instead of charisma. And I think that that's a great way to kind of balance around the power of these classes, because they're not going to be hitting their spells as often, because they have these poor base attack bonuses. They're going to be very comparatively fragile. And that I feel like is better designed because it allows you to pump more power into the spells and the magical abilities of these classes, rather than kind of, go half and half on that power a little bit, because your wizard and your sorcerer are just going to kind of optimally be a little bit more robust than your psychic or your arcanist. And I think that's a good focus. Honestly, I think that focus also extends out to the other classes on this list, right? The idea that Kineticist is a con-based class is awesome to me. I really like that design.
Actually, I kind of take issue with that. I think it's a good component, but making a con-based, what is essentially a spellcaster, is kind of a dangerous design decision. I definitely think that the archetypes let you swap it out for wisdom and charisma, which is the overwhelming soul and ascetic kineticist, I think. I think those are interesting, but I think having a con-based caster as just a baseline function is cool. But as far as balance goes, it's kind of giving a class the best possible stat to dump into, because nobody can really be faulted for a really high con when that con affects your save DCs, your hit points, your fort saves. It's really interesting. I just wish that the class itself wasn't so heavily based around con as a casting stat.
I actually agree with the principle that you're getting at, right? That a con-based caster in principle is a kind of a poor design decision, because you're right, it is kind of triple dipping in all of these good stats.
They nerfed the Scarred Witch Doctor, which was a con-based witch. It used to be the Scarred Witch Doctor used to be a con-based witch, but then they switched it to gets an extra 2 points of intelligence for casting purposes, so that the orcs could take them and not be nerfed to the ground.
Yeah, the thing that I like about Kineticist, and the thing that makes Kineticist kind of the exception to me, is the burn system. If Kineticist was a con-based caster, so to speak, without a system like burn, I think they would probably be overpowered, right? But, basically, in order for a Kineticist to cast his spells, he keeps having to accept all this non-lethal damage, and that brings down the amount of power that goes into the class, because all of a sudden he can't just be a soak tank.
See, I'm going to kind of go another step further. I think that the burn system is actually a little bit too punishing, just because of the way that the hit die works, and that the burn system's always your class level and damage. You're as you level up, your average hit points per level is inevitably going down since it started at full. And you're burning a larger percentage of your health at every level with each point of burn you accept. And I think that's actually a little bit too limiting, it seems, to me.
I actually think that a lot of the specific class features kind of mitigate that. Like the Gather Power class feature, which allows you, it's or it might not be called that, but I think it's
Gather Power and the internal buffer.
Yeah, you can kind of accept this burn, or you can spend actions. You can let your action economy take that hit for you. I think that's a pretty good way to work around it. I think some of the burn costs are a little bit too high, specifically.
Yeah, that might be a good point.
There are some of them that I'm just like, wow, that's like really 3 burn, that's really 4 burn.
Actually, as far as the burn cost goes, I think they're almost a little too low, because between infusion specialization and all these things you can do to mitigate them, if you want to make compare this to the 3/5 warlock, if you want to have a caster class that can, throw down all day, that's really cool, but I think you should have some sort of opportunity cost for that. And between infusion specialization and gather power in particular, it's kind of I feel like there's no real resource sink as you gain levels and you learn more powers, because for instance at level 3 you can take the maximum, the highest burn power you can take, I think, is 2 burn, which is that at level 3 is pretty punishing, but by the time you get to level 8 or 9 and you can take a 4 burn, it's still only going to cost, it's only in reality going to cost you 1 or 2. And I think that's still,
that 2 is still the same percentage of or a greater percentage of your health over the for the particular spell, right?
Right.
That 2 burn is still 20-ish% of your health.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is part of the reason, is part of the thing that mitigates that.
To go back to the burn topic, though, I think actually the kineticist is relatively, it is unique in the fact that it has the only class feature in the game that makes you more vulnerable as you gain levels. And I think on a design perspective that seems a little wonky, but I think that's also kind of cool in the sense that you're capable of essentially enduring more punishment, because the output you're getting from spending 5% of your life or whatever gets a higher net benefit. And I think that's an interesting design decision.
I also think that in general, it's compensated for well. They get the, I think it's called elemental overflow, which is the, when you have a certain amount of burn sunk in, your attack and damage goes up. Also, there are the defensive talents, I think they're called. They get more powerful as you burn into them. And I think that stuff does make up for it a little bit. Though I do kind of agree that it definitely fits into this, and this is a theme that goes all throughout. The full book of Occult Adventures. It's what is this price that you're willing to pay for your power, right? For the kineticist, it's you're going to do damage to yourself, right? You're going to take all of this non-lethal damage in order to really output. But the next class down the list that I just wanted to touch on / talk about, because I think it's an interesting class and a well-designed class, even though I probably never ever play it, is the medium. And the medium has a similar mechanic, right? Where, every day they do their seance, and in their seance they become, it's kind of crazy because it's almost like they adapt entirely to a class, like a whole new class for that day. But in order to empower their seance, they can accept influence from the spirits that they are, taking into themselves. And I think that is a similar kind of downside that we're talking about when we're talking about accepting burn in order to empower yourself.
Right. I think that, I just, this comes up a lot in our, discussions outside the podcast, but the idea of getting a role-playing penalty for a mechanical benefit is sort of suspect, and while the medium itself does have a little bit of a, kind of built-in regulator for that, so you do get the mechanical effects too, I think it's still a not great design decision, especially for Pathfinder, which is just so crunchy that you can't really enforce a lot of the RP drawbacks. So it's the taboos are interesting, but I feel like a player in with a kind of a power gaming mindset is just going to kind of break that. On top of that, I think back in the playtest, at least the version 1 or 2, the idea was that there was going to be a lot more spirit options, one for each alignment, I think, and even then, I I think it was something like there was one for every hero card, which might have been the idea, and they cut that down to 6, just one for each stat. And it would have been interesting to see that system more fully developed. You know, given that would kind of give more pratfalls for, oh, nobody takes this spirit, everyone takes this one. It's still kind of unusual that, you know, the 6 spirits you do get to take are not necessarily as customizable as I might like for a casting class like this.
Especially I definitely feel that.
Especially if it's designed to emulate, like, a given class role. I think it would be cool to say, like, okay, I use the Archmage today, and then I use the Unicorn tomorrow to take on, or like the Hierophant today, and I use the Unicorn tomorrow to get the Divine Spellcasting, but focus it more towards healing, or something like that. Like, I thought that was really cool, and I'm really surprised and kind of disappointed they stripped it down as much as they did.
I think, honestly, it was to reduce a little bit of the crunch to it. I remember reading it in the playtest and being like, oh my Christ. First of all, I thought it was a little crazily powerful, because of how applicable it was to just every single situation, you know? It's already powerful enough in like, the base, like, as written, because, you know, if you need an Arcane Caster that day, cool, wonderful. You got an Arcane Caster. Oh, you need a backup healer? Great, cool, he's your healer for the day. You know, you need a tank, you need a bard, you need like a dex damage dealer. He can literally do all of these things, and he can do them pretty competitively, you know, all things considered, which I thought was really strong. In general, though, I do see where you're coming from, and I do kind of agree that I feel like the 6 limitations that they the 6 spirits that you can adopt, and the limitations that they bring are a little bit tough to enforce, especially in Captain Crunch games. Honestly, as I was reading these taboos, I just couldn't help but think, like, either this is one of those things where the GM is, you know, keeping track of it doggedly, and it just reads like he's being a huge dick, because every time you break your taboo, he's gotcha! You broke the you know what I mean? Or it's something that the GM just ignores, and they get all this power for free. And it's like, I don't know. I don't really know that it was that
So I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on, and I'm going to say...
He's literally putting a tinfoil hat on.
It's an R2D2 hat, but I'm going to say that the reason they stripped so many of the spirits out is so they could sell more of them in splat books. Mark my words, there's going to be a bunch of spirits in splat books down the road.
But, like, that's the thing, is, like, where they would have done that, at least to some extent, in Occult Origins, and there is nothing. Like, there's virtually nothing for mediums in there.
That is true.
But that's the baffling thing, is that there was nothing for mediums that was, like, not, like, just one archetype, but you get 2 full elements for kineticists.
Yeah, that's true.
That's insane. And given that the Void Kineticist isn't super... I didn't think it was super engaging, and the Phytokineticist is comparatively, like, amazing, because it's super... You know...
Wood!
As much as I don't share... Mega's fascination with wood, I will say that it was really interesting to see that as a well-developed element and not just something that was kind of shoehorned in. Whereas, like, I feel like Void didn't have a solid conception for it.
I think Void had a solid, like, fantasy behind it, but I don't think that it was executed well on.
Sure.
I agree with that. The other thing, though, is that elemental powers are mutually exclusive for a kineticist, right? So adding more flexibility to the kinds of elemental powers you can take doesn't actually power up the class at all. Because at the end of the day, you can only take 3, you know, at maximum, you can take 3 different elements or dive into an element 3 times, right? Like, I think it's once at first level, then at, like, 7, then at 14, probably, somewhere along those lines.
7, 14, and 18, I think.
Yeah, okay, so 4 times, right? You're never going to get more than those 4 elemental choices as a kineticist. But as a medium, if you introduce more spirits that a medium can just take whenever, you know, outside of restrictions like an archetype or restrictions like a feat, right? It's just powering up the class, because all of a sudden they have more options to take in this, you know, in terms of flexibility to be more perfect for whatever situation is going to come along.
But that's not a problem with like mediums in particular. You could say the same thing for whenever, you know, like in Occult Adventures, all these psychic spells, wizards and clerics can still cast them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I honestly do think that is also, like, that's legit power creep, right? That is a thing that happens. And it's tough in a certain way to balance around it.
Yeah,
as a GM.
Sure. So to get on as far as like complexity goes, I think probably the most complex class in the book is the occultist, because while the psychic has the functionality of not only its like PowerPoint pool, but also your spell choices and so on and so forth, the occultist has so much micromanagement to it that I find that really compelling as a player, but also potentially very frustrating for a GM to keep track of. But I think it's easily the most, as I say, as I'm going to roll one in Hell's Rebels, right?
No, hey man, I have read all of the occultist rules. I have a good handle on that class. I like the class a lot, actually. It's probably, up there in terms of my favorites in the book. But
I think that's probably my number 2 from the. I think that's probably my number 2 class from the book, just because it's for what it is, like it's exactly what you want in the sense like it's as close to a magical gadgeteer as you're going to get.
Well, that's the thing that I love so much about it. I think that the item focus on it, and like this outsidery focus with these magical spirit binding circles and everything. I'm just amazed at how clever that flavor goes with, a 6th level spellcaster who unlocks deep spells by school, right? I think that there's a lot of flavor in that, mechanically in those mechanics, but that could have just been anything, right? We could have just called that, this is a warlock in Pathfinder, right? And it's just another regular 6th level spellcaster, completely bland and uninteresting, with not a lot of differentiating flavor between, itself and the sorcerer, right? Like, this is the Pathfinder mage. But I thought the occultist was just such beautiful flavor for those mechanics that I really, really enjoy the class for that reason.
I do take issue with the idea of like mental focus, like as far as an overarching kind of name. That kind of I get why it's in the Occult Adventures book, but it's like it's just like, oh, mental focus. I think really hard about the skull of my dead grandma, and suddenly I can raise the dead. It's like, it's it's okay. Like it is exactly what you want it to be, but at the same time, it's just a little bit mental focus is kind of like if I pop some Adderall before I study this finger bone.
Mark, the truth is out there.
Oh my god, dude. I've been thinking about that shit for since the book was fucking announced. I'm like, yes.
I mean, the other thing, I honestly just kind of think that that's just like when they're naming the pool of swashbuckler points, panache, it's like, they're running out of shit to call these points, right? Every
that's
new
cool.
class has
That's
points.
fine.
Yeah.
You could have called it Prana or Orgone or some shit like that. It's mentioned later in the book anyway, so that sounds a lot more ooh, spooky than mental focus. But
you have 6 spooky skeletons per day.
Ooh. I don't really hold it against them that they
spooky points.
That they kind of lobbed this. You know what I mean? This is them bunting, right? They're just like, fuck it, mental focus. Who cares?
Fuck it. Nobody cares. I think. Have either of you guys looked at the Occult Bestiary yet? Because I kind of skimmed it, and the one thing that stood out for me was the Psychic Lich, which is just the most pain in the ass thing to kill, infinitely worse than a regular Lich.
That's gotta be. I mean, one of the things I really enjoy about the Psychic is I think the Psychic spell list is just fucking awesome, right? There's one spell.
Yeah, they are really cool.
Head explode or explode head. It's if you're below. It's if you're below my hit die in. I know, it's different. It's if you're below 20 HP or something, I just make your head explode, and your head exploding does AoE damage to all of your allies. I read that spell, and I was just like, wow, Paizo, A fucking plus.
Yeah, no, actually, speaking of spells that are really cool, I actually kind of wanted to touch on the Psychic Duel system for a second.
Yeah, okay.
Which I think, I actually really like it. I think that's actually a really cool option for a character that's, say, a little bit less combat-focused. This kind of you pick somebody out, maybe one of their martial characters who's not traditionally good in the mental battlefield, and lock them down for a number of rounds while you mentally duke it out with them, and your party tries to protect you while that happens. I think that's a cool mechanic. I'm actually very happy with the way that they put that up.
I think the execution is very, very good for the psychic duels, especially because it doesn't take you out of initiative order, and it only lets you do it between two people, so it doesn't create this weird subturn thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of reminded of the way that the Matrix works in Shadowrun.
I am ambivalent on psychic rules. It's funny because I actually feel very similarly to psychic rules as I do to diplomacy challenges, right? Where it's kind of like a niche system that I don't want to engage in it. I don't want to endorse it all that much, right? Like it can pop up a couple of times during an adventure, but if every combat involves a psychic duel, it just feels really tedious to me. And
I think it works because it replaces your combat action otherwise.
Right.
I don't think the overhead is really that much, especially because there's no secondary battlefield or anything you have to worry about.
I think the one thing that I don't like about psychic duels, just from, I'm mostly a GM. I don't really get to play as much as I get to run games for whatever reason. But the thing I don't really care for about it is the fact that it's most effective against people who... Like, for instance, if you use it on your party's, really heavy melee tank, you just put them in the situation where they can't really effectively defend themselves, and you wreck them. And I think Pathfinder as a system is quite difficult to accommodate that.
Yeah, that's a bit of what I think about psychic duels. The other part about psychic duels... So here, my core complaint with psychic duels is, in my view, diplomacy challenges are filling a niche, right? Because... diplomacy by raw is a very, very light system, right? And there's not a lot of crunchiness to it, and not having a lot of crunchiness to it means that all of the dire diplomacy encounters basically feel the same mechanically as all of the mundane diplomacy counters. And creating a system like diplomacy challenges, creates a spectrum to have between the two, right? But the thing with psychic duels is the combat is already ridiculously crunchy, right? So adding more crunch to allow your psychic, who can already cast spells and use their combat, powers and everything like that, I kind of feel like, what's the gain, right? It's just all of these extra rules to gain a little bit of flavor. And then on top of that, the flavor doesn't accentuate what I think of psychic duels being coolest being, right? A psychic duel should be you and their most powerful caster, right? Like, going at it in your mindscapes and, like, warping, like, reality and all of this shit. That to me is where a psychic duel is interesting. But what it reads like is I just focus Tez, the 10th level cavalier that has no mental stats whatsoever, and then I just spank him around in a psychic duel for 5 rounds because he's going to be completely ineffective, which is just
that sounds way more awesome, because then it's especially because when that cavalier or whatever can pull that shit off, like, and they do pull out a win, that's really cool, because it's like, ha, fuck you. But on the other hand, at the same time, it's kind of funny to be like, oh, yeah, you called me little baby noodle arms. Who has the noodle arms now? Yeah. And then you turn their arms into, like, fucking...
I mean, really, yeah, but then the question becomes, does Pathfinder really need more ways to fuck over martial characters?
I think maybe what needs to be there is, like, I don't know if there's rules for multi-person psychic...
I think it wouldn't be too hard to implement.
Yeah, I think a caster needs a way to intercept charge. Intercept psychic duel and be like, no, you get out. You're fighting me type of deal. I think that kind of gets you that kind of like
there
crescendo.
Are spells that let you do that.
Yeah,
let you sub in for something.
Okay, yeah,
it's like mental dimension door or some shit like that.
Okay, yeah, because it's like
I spent a lot more time looking at this than I really probably should have.
But that's the kind of thing you want, right? Like the thing that's like, oh no, it's you and me, not you and like the choppy fighter. And the other part of that too is that on the outside, somebody has to defend you to make sure you're not being beat up by their people. And I think the reason that I was so drawn to this is something like, my intentions are going to be kind of clear after this, but when I was thinking about playing the psychic detective, it's like, well, my investigator is going to be Skill Monkey the class, and his combat effectiveness is going to be not great, right? But if I can engage one of them in a psychic duel, I can be useful in combat
for a little while.
Yeah, for a little while at least, without being a total drag on the team. I thought that was neat. I think it's neat. It's kind of like for a character that doesn't otherwise, like, you're right with the psychic. They're already stomping shit in combat, so they don't need it as much. But for those kind of auxiliary situations where you've got a character who's mostly designed to be doing out of combat things, that it's a good thing for that character to do.
I will go ahead and say that I planned on, and by planned on I mean committed myself to not incorporating these rules. But after that explanation, I will consider it. That's actually pretty
sure.
clever.
I'm probably not going to be playing. I'm probably going to be playing the traditional investigator anyway. I've got some reasons for that. But
are you going to dip swashbuckler though?
No, I'm going to do the swashbuckler. Those reasons are not for here or now, but maybe right before we start Hell's Rebels, one of our casts will be about that
swashbuckler
game.
dip.
Oh, the swashbuckler.
Just so everybody knows, the swashbuckler, in my opinion, is the most ridiculously effective one-level dip in a multi-class. And the reason I know that that's the case is because Mark did it in one of my games.
Oh, man. I feel like we have to dedicate...
games.
I feel like we have to dedicate an episode to Cheese Fest at some point. Just
we can talk about Indiana Jones.
Okay, so there have been, 2 classes that we haven't talked about yet?
Okay.
Actually, Mesmerist is something that I wanted to talk about because I was actually disappointed by it.
Really?
Good! I hate this class! I'm sorry.
What?
Oh, wow.
I
hate
this class so much. I think it's so dumb and stupid and bad.
Okay,
so
I am not that far down the road, but so I really like the idea of the guy that's look into my eyes, and is kind of that type of debuffer, that type of battlefield kind of
control guy.
Yeah, controller, I guess. But the class doesn't feel like that. Your stare is your debuffing mechanic, and otherwise you're just kind of this generic buffer that your ally, you implant suggestions in your allies, which is a good thing, and I don't really like that.
I hate that so much.
I actually
so
am a little bit
bad.
more generous. I actually really like the Mesmerist. I think that the big problem that I have with it is just the fact that it's supposed to be like an anti-bard, like a debuff class, and it kind of splits the difference because of the touch treatments and memory implants and shit like that. But then after I actually built one, the memory implants and the Mesmerist tricks are actually more debuff oriented than you think they are, just because they trigger when enemies attack your allies, then bad things happen to them.
Okay.
And I think the stare is a really cool mechanic because it's basically yes, this is a class that does mind affecting things, so we're going to debuff the enemy will save so you're not bad at that. I think that's reasonably good design, and on top of that, it also incorporates, secondary and tertiary debuffs along with the will save penalty. So, to that end, I think that there's certainly things there that are way more towards helping your allies than they are towards debuffing your enemies, like touch treatment in particular. I think that would have been cooler if it was a stare mechanic that you could burn those to just exhaust someone or make them confused or whatever, just as a pool of resources. That might be a little strong, but I don't think the class is that bad. I think it's also just very, very specific, in the sense it would have been a really cool bard alternate class. I don't know as a full base class of its own though. That's
I kind of get why
yeah.
I kind of get why they went this direction with the class, just in terms of a big picture Occult Adventures design decision, right? Because none of the Occult Adventure class are really all that supportive by nature, right? Occultist can be, and medium can be, and kinesis. I
disagree because I think the medium is kind of the exception there, just because it's supposed to be a support class. It's you can be a fighter today, but your party is probably going to need you to be something.
I guess that's fair. It seems to be they kind of shoehorned the Mesmerist rather to be a support class when it shouldn't be, right?
Right.
The Mesmerist should be a debuff DPS class, right? It should be a class and it stares at you and it does a bunch of damage with his stares, and his stares debuff you like a witch hex or alchemist bombs or something like that. And the Mesmerist tricks are they're so dumb. They're so stupid. And I honestly don't even know that the mechanics are that bad, right? The mechanics are probably okay. And if you told me that they were creating a 6th level caster base class called the Warden right? And its whole thing was he protects his he's like an ally protective mage who protects his allies with spells and stuff, and his powers, instead of being stuff like, you know, you shoot this like ray or whatever, his powers are these kinds of spells and buffs that he places on his allies.
Plug in your homebrew here.
Right? This could be okay. This could work out. This is an idea I can get behind. But the idea that I'm hypnotizing my allies and then like the fucking like the mental suggestions I'm putting in them are triggered, like I'm their fucking like psychotherapist, like what the fuck? Who the fuck came up with that?
What about the campfire RP, buddy? Now would you need to lay down and tell me all of your... What did you think of your mother, buddy?
I think
I hate it so much. I think it's so dumb.
On that same note, though, I think the psychic skill unlocks are really good, a really interesting design choice.
The psychic... You mean like the auto writing?
Yeah.
I hated that.
That shit's amazing.
I thought it was so dumb. I was like, well... I read that and I was
Spoilers,
like... Well,
that's going to happen a lot in Hell's Rebels and My Occultist.
Oh, boy.
I get, like, divination as, like, a level 1 character.
Sure, but that's...
Like that.
You know, it's all right, but, like... I felt they looked like, well, we got to do something with... This is a hardback. We need to do something with skills. And so I
think it's good. I think it's fine, because it's
like...
like...
It feels a little too cheesy for me.
No, it's fine.
It's cheesy
you have to take a feat or be one of these 6 classes. How is that cheesy at all?
Oh, no. I don't mean cheesy in the, like power gaming.
Like, they had to bullshit it in kind of thing?
I mean, like, cheesy in, like, the kind of campy way. Right.
But that's good. That's really good for this kind of book.
I don't know. I just thought it was... Well, that's weird, though, because this book is pretty focused on being, on being serious, right? Like, half of these classes are all about what price are you willing... how deep are you willing to go to unlock your full potential?
This
right?
is like if the Vigilante was released and it was all Nolan Batman, except for one section, which had Bat Shark repellent.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Can you imagine if that was an Ultimate Intrigue? They just have, like, a giant section of, like, super dumb gadgets. Anyway, I think the occult skill unlocks are filler.
I think they're good. I think they're filler, but I think they're good filler, because it's like... Okay. It's. I think it's good. I think that it's good that they're there, and you can kind of choose to use or not use them. The one class that I found really, really disappointing was the Spiritualist, though. Like,
interesting. I
think
the Spiritualist.
It's a shittier summoner, and
Oof.
like, it's the flavor. Like, what they were trying to go for doesn't seem to come through. I personally feel like I think it's an okay class, and it's like but it's basically, will your GM not let you play a summoner? Not even the Unchained one? Well, you still got the Spiritualist.
Well, I think a part of that is the summoner...
Do you like ghosts?
Well,
I
think
ghosts?
A part of that is the summoner being a poorly designed class from the get-go. You know what I mean? Like, the base summoner was pretty shittily designed. It didn't have great flavor or... really it was just mechanics, I kind of felt like. And I thought the Unchained Summoner obviously improved upon that, right, by dedicating yourself to kind of this outsider stuff and changing the spell list around. And I think that's cool. But I really do feel like the Spiritualist fills its own niche and specifically, fills it well. I don't know. I thought it was pretty well filled, especially
I think
like
it falls
the
into the same trap that the Mesmerist does, in the sense that it would be a good alternate class for the summoner rather than an actual class
actually,
in and of itself. To finish my rant about how much I hate the Mesmerist would be totally okay if these stupid Mesmerist tricks were an archetype and the base class was focused on bold stares, like big, powerful.
I was actually gonna say I really like the combat focused Mesmerist archetype, like it's like Blade Dancer or something.
Yeah, exactly. I thought almost all of the Mesmerist archetypes are basically pretty.
I love Cult Master because it's like, oh, did you die? Well, good that you incepted your allies and they're now Marilyn Manson. Like,
yeah, dude,
I think
that was pretty interesting.
I think what happened, with like these last two classes that we were talking about, is that part of this book was designed to be run separate from the rest of the content, right? Like, if you want to have an occult adventure, most of your heroes are probably going to want to be one of these 6 classes,
or like a fighter or a rogue, or
like. But I think this book was designed so that you could have a party of only characters from these classes, so you can automatically fit in. I think the Mesmerist and the Spiritualist suffered a little bit from that. But on the Spiritualist, is Spiritualist the one with the archetype that lets you play as like a ghost
You possess your own body.
Yeah, you possess your body back again. Yeah,
I think that's a fucking super awesome.
I think it's really cool. Yeah,
I think it's really cool. But you know what bugs me about it? You should be able to possess other people's. You know what I mean? In my mind, the perfect
like that scene from Ghost.
Do they not have possession on their spell list?
Well, no, right? What it is in my mind, the perfect incarnation of this thing is you possess a body, but it's like rotting beneath you, so you constantly have to find like new bodies and inhabit these new bodies. And I feel like if it was a little bit more focused on that, it would have been a knock out of the park, 10 out of 10 home run. As it is written, I like it a lot. 9 out of 10, obviously. It's just like that. As soon as I read it, I was like, oh, come on. Like, oh, it could have been...
I also think it's good. I also think it's great because you can also use it in a regular campaign as, like, one of your characters died a spectacular death, and so you don't cheapen death. They have to take a level of this, like,
reanimated archetype.
Yeah.
So that's just Dark Souls. Like,
yeah.
It's basically like, you want to play Dark Souls? Well, you died. Oh, looks like you're a spiritualist now.
I think...
Or reanimated medium or whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Is
it a medium or
it's the medium.
Oh, it is a medium one?
The spiritualist is the one that, like, you can have your ghost be more powerful than you, is one of the archetypes, but I've tried to use that in Rune Lords, and it's just not very good. Like
the haunted one, and by the way, I know exactly.
Yeah.
I remember reading the mechanics and being like, well, I know what class she is now. Like, that was pretty
good luck.
Yeah.
That sucks.
I really, excuse me. The thing I like about the spiritualist is I liked the interaction between ectoplasmic form and corporeal form and having it inside of your brain. You know, I thought that interplay of kind of like stance dancing almost with your ghost was unique enough to kind of carry the class. I also think the flavor is great. In fact, the spiritualist makes me like the medium less, because in my mind, the spiritualist and the medium are kind of occupying the same flavor space. Like, not 100% overlap, but like 75%
don't know about
overlap.
that.
And I think the spiritualist executes on it better. Which is one of the things
I disagree.
that kind of
I think it would have been really cool.
Me.
I think what would have been really cool is if you could scrap the spiritualist entirely and just have a class feature for the medium that lets you summon the ghost you're channeling or whatever. Like, that would have been pretty cool. Really broken, but it would tie together really well.
Or like as an archetype.
Yeah,
the
or something like that.
Is an archetype of the medium.
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, just to be completely clear for the listeners at home, the reanimated medium is a medium archetype and not a spiritualist archetype.
Yeah, I thought it was a spiritualist archetype.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, like, this is kind of like goes to the point that we were talking about, that, like, medium and spiritualist are pretty close to each other.
And it's funny because I actually think, psychic, mesmerist, occultist, kineticist, they are very, very unique compared to one another. Maybe there's overlap between the psychic and the mesmerist, but honestly, I don't think there's all that much.
I honestly feel like kineticist is probably the least occulty class of the bunch.
It's just there because they needed to publish it.
Yeah,
I'm okay with
that.
I
feel like kineticist fits better into the core game as, like, I feel like you could have released this as the first class after the base classes.
But I think it does fit in Occult Adventures if you consider it more as, like, the thing is, like, it practically is Avatar: The Last Airbender, but in reality it's supposed to be like Carry and Firestarter and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm okay
Wicked
with
Firestarter.
What?
I'm a Firestarter. Wicked Firestarter.
Oh my god, the Prodigy song.
Wow.
Shut up.
I'm sure that, by the way, for all you SoundCloud listeners, Mango has put a link to the song in the description. So go check out, mid-90s proto-techno if you want.
And before we get marked for copyright infringement for that 5-second bad impression of the song.
Yeah.
Please, guys, we're just using it for fair use. It's parody. It's parody. No, but so let's talk about the archetypes for a little bit, if that's cool with you guys.
I actually thought some of the archetypes were pretty weak comparatively. I thought the archetypes using psychic rules for base classes were much, much better. Like the psychic detective or whatever. Or like, dude, the flesh eater barbarian. I am all about the flesh eater barbarian. What an awesome archetype. Whereas I thought a lot of the archetypes for the occult classes were just kind of like, what the fuck is a tome eater?
Yeah,
Like,
dude, I don't know why, but that particular one,
it's the art that sells it.
Yeah, it's really, it's like, I eat books!
It's eating books like we ate sushi last night.
Like, oh man, that was a mistake. But,
so.
But like, I just love the idea, like, not, like, I feel like if you were a GM and you did this, you'd be the biggest dick. But as, like, a player, just, like, maximizing my steal maneuver, stealing the wizard's book, and just eating it in front of him.
That's actually really that's a really funny NPC concept. Actually,
or stealing it from your allies.
I think.
I mean, it's one of those things where
hungry.
it's one of those things where I actually imagined when I saw Tome Eater, my first thought was like, oh, like, you know, oh, maybe he, you know, it's metaphorical and he absorbs. Like that. You know, like you cast a spell on him and he can use a class feature to like regain hit points, or he
books.
gets SR. So no, he just fucking munches down on a copy of fucking, you know, Moby Dick, and it's like
Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah, you know, I was just like, what the fuck?
Oh man, like that reminds me of one of my favorite homebrew barbarian archetypes, which is Big Dumb Barbarian. And it's like, you know how in 3.5 barbarians were illiterate?
Yeah.
Like, Big Dumb Barbarian just took it to the extreme. It's like, really illiterate. But Big Dumb Barbarian can never be illiterate. Like, supreme illiteracy. Big Dumb Barbarian is immune to runes and all magical writings. Like, that's the kind of thing this reminds me of. Like, I hate libraries. I'm going to eat them all.
So,
yeah,
you know, I think you know, just quickly, the kineticist archetypes are kind of like, they're just not very, they're like interesting for what they're supposed to be, but the practical execution is just not great.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're all pretty bland. It kind of sucks. I actually really like the I thought that the blood kineticist was a great idea, you know? I liked Avatar: Last Airbender. I think bloodbending is fucking neat, but the mechanics are just dumb and
not
bad.
Good.
I can't see anybody ever taking this archetype. Because, like, as soon as you come up against a fucking, you know, robot, you're boned. You know, like...
Or something with just bones. If you go against skeletons, it's not so good.
Yeah, and so... I don't know.
Is that like a litmus test for if an archetype is good? Is it worthless against skeletons? If so, pass.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I noticed about some of the kinesis, or at least the monk one, was that it seemed more to be taken as like a multi-class for regular monks.
Yeah.
Than it seemed to be taken as a on its own. Like
that's true.
Which you know I think is all right, but like. I don't know. I feel like it's just it takes too much away from the base kinesis. Like I don't see why they needed to get rid of the defensive powers in order
for what, the aesthetic.
Yeah, for the aesthetic. You don't get to use your defensive talents.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even know. Yeah, well, you get the AC bonus. It's not as good, but it's like
I would have rather not gotten the AC bonus. Right? I would have rather.
I think the one that really pisses me off, like, endlessly is the fucking Overwhelming Soul. Because it basically is like, oh, you're going to trade your con-based casting to be a worse caster, and you're also going to use Charisma. Yeah, no. Like, like, the only thing that works for is undead kineticists. And it's like, well... I mean, then it's just as good, but, you know, how often are you going to have to go against undead kineticists? The answer should be very infrequently, because... Right.
Spooky, scary
to be honest,
skeletons.
I actually kind of think
oh my God.
Now that I'm looking at the medium archetypes, I could kind of like the medium archetypes most of all. I think the Kami medium is great. I think that's a super solid A+ execution, the flavor, and I think the reanimated medium are great.
I also thought that it was really funny that, like, in Occult Adventures, it's all of a sudden there's all this, like, you know, follow-up to, like, the year they did all the Tian Sha stuff.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, here's all of these Asian archetypes. It's like, oh, I mean, I'm cool with that, but like, it was just one of those where it's like, this book is just for me, yay! But, I had another point that I wanted.
Oh man, Buddy and I, we could talk about the amazing cheese with Battle Host.
Or you just get pseudomass full plate.
Let's make full plate is just scratching the surface of the cheese you can get with Battle.
Well, like, what would you get, like a gun or something?
Or like, you know, one of the tech weapons from the tech weapon guy.
Oh, right.
My bonded item is an arc rifle.
Yeah. And seriously, it can never break. Like,
My
what the fuck
bonded
were they
weapon is a grenade.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah,
I want this X-laser.
We
I
get
want
a
this
grenade,
railgun.
and then you enchant returning on it, and that's just your whole class. Is you keep tossing like concussion grenades because it's your bonded. It was like, what? It's for clarity. Okay, just to back up for a second. The battle host is an occultist archetype, and they read the following because I'm going to read it out because it's
fucking story time with Christopher Slaw.
At first level, a battle host forms a supernatural bond with a specific weapon, suit of armor, or shield. This selection is permanent and can never be changed. The bonded item is masterwork quality, and the battle host begins play with it at no cost. The bonded item is immune to the broken condition for as long as the battle host lives. It's like, what the fuck were they thinking? The battle host who takes full plate, that's 1,800 gold for free that he got at level 1.
Yeah,
right?
and like, you know, that's like the like base cheese
mildest. That's like the mildest cheese option.
Then you get in the stinky Gouda where it's like, yeah, I have this $110,000.
You know what's hilarious, by the way?
Gun.
Raw, you could get mithril. You could get a mithril breastplate. You could get mithril because it says specific weapon, suit of armor, or shield, and that's literally the term used to describe special materials used to make armor. Is specific items like.
Yeah, I think part of the reason they did it was so that, you know, like, if you did want to go full plate on your battle host occultist, like, you're kind of shit out of luck. If you want it because you can't change it.
Yeah.
And I like it. I think the full plate balances itself out relatively quickly. By the time you hit level 5, it's not that much of an advantage. But I think, like, if you really want to go deep cheese, that, like, the
tech guide.
Yeah, the tech guide or any.
The only problem is, like, getting batteries, but if your GM is just like, no, fuck you, you can have this, but I'm not gonna let you get away with it.
Couldn't I just dip one level into Technomancer to take care of
that?
Oh
my god, Tech Slinger.
Oh
yeah,
no.
Just call it a day.
You're fine, no.
I mean, but if you did want to, like, you know, exotic weapon proficiency firearm is a feat if you wanted to get, like, a gun. Right. Like
a double hack butt.
Yeah.
Never again. Not even once.
The other archetype I really like, and I'm going to stick by this bold claim, is the Necrocultist, which is the necromancy-focused occultist. I think it is the best possible, like necromancer fantasy class. Honestly, you know, in thinking about Hell's Vengeance, which is the evil, like, Pathfinder campaign, the Paizo campaign is coming out after Hell's Rebels, I kind of want to play a Necrocultist. Like, well, that would be awesome, and that would be, you know, I really think that it's, like, the best designed Necromancer-dedicated class or archetype that I've seen from Pathfinder.
Yeah, no, actually, that's pretty nice. That's pretty fair. Like, Ghostly Horde gets you that Commander of the Dead. Like, I think it's really just Ghostly Horde that gets you that really well.
Yeah.
Like that.
Plus, it's also important to mention the So the Necromancy implement tree has a ton of stuff for this, right? Like, you get a skeleton buddy, and then at higher levels you can summon
spooky?
multiple. Yeah, yes, it's spooky. You can summon multiple hit dice of skeleton buddies and zombies and stuff, and you can mix and match their types. You know, you can make burning zombies and burning skeletons and black skeletons and all this stuff. And so I think all of that stuff plus Necrocultist is just super, super solid Necromancer design. I'm glad that they finally released it, especially in the face of shit like Undead Master. Necromantic Master, it's a wizard archetype that's just retardedly bad. So that's another archetype I really enjoy, even though basically all of the other medium ones are pretty dumb, especially Tometer, which is the dumbest of them all.
You sound bad.
Dude, so moving into the base class archetypes, like, the Sylvan Balladeer is a really cool archetype, but I don't know what it's doing in this book.
Yeah, why is it?
Yeah, I have no
it's
idea.
like that is the one archetype that I'm like, what is this supposed to be? Is it like, what is this? Is this like a reference I'm just not understanding?
Yeah, like I said, I don't think it's bad. It just doesn't belong in the Occult Adventures book. It just nothing. Although I do like the fact that they have the Nicolas Cage archetype for the Cavalier.
Yeah, that was really good. I love that.
Wait.
Also,
there's a ghost. There's a
the Ghost Rider. Yes, I wasn't there. He's been in a lot of movies, guys. Okay, damn.
That's true.
Yeah, I think I also think that there are. I just love so many of these archetypes. Flesh Eater is probably one of my favorites because I think the idea of being this barbarian that it is literally the distillation of like the I eat your heart to gain your power in mechanics, and it's so cool. Especially because I love the idea of walking around as a Flesh Eater barbarian with like a big bag full of just like random shit, like, oh, I'm gonna eat some dragon, I'm gonna eat some dragon fish sticks or whatever, and then I'm gonna eat some, bugbear.
If you were like if you were an undead barbarian, could you be a cannibal corpse?
Whoa.
plus one.
So one thing I'm going to point out that I'm disappointed in, I think Mark, you're disappointed in this too, is Mindblade for the Magus. I think it's a really cool idea. It commits this very basic and very fundamental mistake, which is tries to put class features for two different build paths in the same archetype, and thus makes both of them shitty.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's not powerful enough to make, but you could do either two-handed or dual wield, but it treats it as if having both of those powers goes to the power budget when you're never going to be using them at the same time.
Right.
It's just aggravating because it's a cool idea, and I don't think I think given a little bit extra power that wasn't pulled out by that budget, it would be a cool archetype.
Yeah, I think it's also one of those things where it's like they're definitely trying to mine all the this is really cynical, but mine the psionic stuff. And it's like you're just never going to make a better soul knife than the soul knife. Like it's interesting that's on like the mages, because I find that's a that's a good combination of classes that I'd like to play, but the execution's just not not good.
I've always
wanted
wanted
that bad though. I guess I see where you're coming from.
It's a little bit closer to me because Soul Knife for the longest time was my favorite class, and it's like the mages comes fight me.
Yeah.
But the Soul Knife and Mages are both really cool classes, and I think
I'm pretty sure at this point my favorite class is my own homebrew archetype for the Cavalier. I can't really judge anybody based on their favorite classes.
Yeah, I think part of this too is for a long time, and my roommate brought this up, I thought he had a very good point. There should be an archetype for Magus, which is you use a real big sword and you have some sort of penalty for that. But, you use a two-handed weapon.
Right.
And and that's your archetype, and the fact that it's kind of half spells, here as there are a ton of Magus archetypes with diminished spell casting. I think that's more than enough to make up for the two.
To be completely honest, I actually think that archetype should be a Blood Rager archetype with enhanced spell casting. If I were to,
it's different, but I can see your point.
I really like the Esoteric though. I thought the Esoteric was a great Magus archetype. The one that allows them to do it with unarmed strike, and they're scribe. That I thought that one was super solid. I could totally see myself play that.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. I thought that was solid.
Yeah, well, that's cool.
I also like I like the rogue. This is one of those classes that I would make a million NPCs for before I ever make a PC for this one. The false medium.
Yeah,
that's really funny.
The giant troll.
It's like the Razmiran priest archetype for sorcerers. It's you're not actually a divine spellcaster, but you can pretend to be one. That's really funny.
I also like the I thought the Ectoplasm Sorcerer Bloodline was pretty sweet. Mostly because the art in it.
It's just they have a gnome surrounded by green goop with a 4-pack. It's what? Who drew this and why?
Still not better than the the Unchained moral quandary.
Oh,
picture.
That's the best picture. Don't even lie. For those of you who are a little lost, so there's a picture in Unchained, right?
I think it's Unchained.
Which is it shows the iconic paladin at a crossroads, and one arrow says burning orphanage, and the other says the blackguard's castle, and the blackguard is hiding behind it.
Yeah,
looking sinister.
And the iconic paladin is just why must I choose?
That is, it's pretty funny. I agree. I hesitate going, too crazy into the rest of this stuff, do you guys feel comfortable about like the rest of the book? Because I have a couple of bones to pick about some of the other stuff that comes out here, but it is really...
Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so in Under Occult Rewards, they talk about cursed items, right? And I love the idea, A+ Paizo, so neat. These cursed items are so neat and interesting, right? And, it's like, oh, how many benefits am I going to be able to get before this thing, like, completely fucks me? And it would be great if they were not so fucking obvious. The monkey's paw. You've got that portrait from the Portrait of Dorian Gray. It's
dude,
like,
the portrait's actually really good. Like, it's not.
I get that. I get that it's really good, but it's so obvious. Like, I can't trick my players into stuff by giving them a cursed item and having them be like, "Oh, I'm so strong now."
Oh, why don't you take the primate's hand to grant your wishes?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's like
a orangutan's fist.
I think it's like that's just sort of a problem with Pathfinder in general, though, that curse items are just like, it's really hard to pull that off well, just because everyone's just like no, it's not in my build path. Even if it's like an ostensibly really good item, they're like, no, it's not a dagger. I don't get what
it doesn't have an elemental enchant.
Nice little Easter egg for people who, pay attention to the Rune Lords games, I guess. Though I guess that didn't actually happen on stream, so maybe
it's
not.
okay.
Anyway,
well, didn't it? Oh, never mind. Whatever.
But it happened a little bit on stream, actually, now that I remember it. But yeah, that's the thing that like bugs me about this. I was so ready to like get behind your ship, Paizo, and then it's just so obvious. I do like that they went the other way a little bit, and they had stuff like the 4-leaf clover. I think that's pretty sweet. That's pretty cool. I'm a happy camper.
I think they kind of have to, in some ways, do the classic ones, because otherwise people are going to be like, well, where's the monkey's paw? It's such a slam dunk and they missed it.
Where's the picture of Dorian Gray? It's all that's here is like this, ring that makes you always optimistic.
Yeah,
why isn't there a ring that makes you invisible but makes the evil Dark Lord see you?
Where's my shrunken head? I want to have a shrunken head on my caster. Yeah, I thought a lot of the occult rewards and the items that they put out were just not super amazing. The what are they called? The talismans are pretty cool and they're pretty neat, and I could see myself implementing them. But that's kind of it. I kind of feel like most of the other stuff I would just want to.
I think an actually overlooked system in this book that I think is pretty neat
is the chakras.
Is the chakras, as Mark looks at the page I have open.
I don't know. I think it's really funny that like I've got a lot of friends who are into yoga and all that shit, and a fucking Pathfinder splat book managed to explain it way better than they did. like that's an accomplishment. Like, kudos to you, Paizo. I understand what Kundalini is now, but things I never thought I would say in like a million years.
Isn't that a type of spaghetti?
Yeah, you gotta hear Kundalini. That's why it's always leaking out of your pockets.
But I think the chakra is a neat thing, and the fact that it's kind of open. And, like, you could have a character dedicate his entire combat to trying to open all of the chakras.
It just takes too long. That's my problem with it. Is, like, it takes, like, 7 rounds to do it.
I think this is good.
You can rush it, but it's just not gonna work.
I think this is good for, like, a boss fight where a character's like, hey, this isn't even my final form type of deal. Or, like Rock Lee takes the leg weights off. That kind of thing.
Michael Jackson puts on his white glove.
Like you have you have a character that's dedicated to this, and he just at some point he gets his crowning moment of badassness where he opens all them chakras
and then dies.
Yeah,
thanks, Rock Lee.
Yeah, I'm more or less in Mark's camp about this. Just 7 rounds, and
it's interesting, right? Like it's good that it's there, but it's like I feel kind of the same way that you guys do about the skill unlocks, and that it's good. It's filler, but it's good filler. So
okay, I could see that.
Yeah, I actually, to be honest, a rule set that they explain in the same chapter that I love and that I'm 100% implementing in like all of my games are occult rituals. To be honest, occult rituals are taken.
It's just like 4E.
Yeah, exactly. They're taken basically from 4th edition. And, I like a lot of things about 4th edition, and I dislike some things about 4th edition, obviously. But I thought rituals were a real slam dunk. Rituals were a real great way to kind of epitomize, a big facet of fantasy, magic. And I thought that the occult rituals were a great translation to get them into 3.5. And I'm 100% about them in my games.
I think they're good, but I think they're more useful for... I think what the good conceit about why they're published is, these things exist rather than the actual rituals themselves, just because then you can kind of be like, oh, yeah, well, this crowd of fucking
I see
farmers summoned the devil because they used a ritual, rather
it's
than
totally
and then people
I
can't
would use as a GM more than I wouldn't want to use it as a player. Who cares? They'll take way too
right.
long.
I feel like there are specific instances, but it's not like there's oh boy, time to do the ritual casting, guys. It's like once in a while you have a thing you want to do.
Yeah.
Well, my point is more then it can't be like, oh well, the rules say you can't do that. They have to be a 9th level spellcaster and
exactly.
Have a baboon's paw growing out of their tongue.
I also think what I also like about it is it really kind of accentuates this flavor that really sucks to me. That's not actually in Pathfinder all that much, of a bunch of spellcasters working together to accomplish something. You know what I mean? Like a bunch of people instead of having the one 9th level caster who just fucking casts wish and gets whatever the hell he wants you know what I mean? It's a bunch of low level casters,
a cabal,
20, 50, you're right, a giant grouping of these guys all working together to create a truly incredible spell effect. That's something that I really like about rituals. It opens up kind of the design, it opens up the mechanics underlying that flavor that I would love to have access to as a GM.
I agree. I just think it's a matter of that it's like a inherent mechanics flavor kind of thing. That's just sort of how Pathfinder is. I think it's good that they're including that as an option, but to kind of I feel like that's a choice that's left up to the GM more than the actual rule set, in the sense can you do this or whatever. I think it's good fact that it's examples of what you can do with it. And
to
I
be
think
completely
that's
honest, I don't really
strength.
Remember any of the specific ones or care about them, right?
Well, one of them is you summon eldritch horrors, basically. And it's
no, I'm just saying the occult ritual section doesn't appeal to me because of the specific rule sets that this the veil structure occult ritual rules text that they gave me, right? The meat of that section to me is the flavor behind it and the creating occult rituals section, because it's just such a perfect tool to have as a GM, and it's a really important one.
Yeah, so I've got the page open to this picture of
Movaro, the iconic occultist.
Oh, is that what he is?
His name is Movaro.
Okay, well, the fact of the matter is
he's a fat guy, and he's the only fat guy in Pathfinder.
He's drawing this eldritch.
He's drawing a circle, and he's putting his face against the wall.
Yeah, the eldritch arithmetic. And he's drawing it with chalk. I love that theme, right?
Page level 2,
they did the math type of deal.
213.
Yeah.
He's keeping up with it. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That is exactly what I'm addressing. That's the thing that makes me a happy camper.
Makes you hard.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say that, but then I was like, maybe I want my podcast to be a little more PG. Damn.
Well, fuck that. So.
I was talking about how braced your body would become. What were you talking about, buddy?
I feel like this erects some.
I was talking about how much it makes me want to go to the gym and work out.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That's what I was talking about.
Never gonna be a battle host without. Never gonna have the ectoplasm bloodline unless you have that 6-pack.
Yeah, exactly.
That gnome physiology 101, though.
Yeah, boys.
Gnomes.
We in there, though.
All right. I think we've covered this book pretty thoroughly.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too.
Okay, so what are
any closing thoughts from you guys?
Out of 5, how would you rate the various classes? Just comprehensively as far as their additions to the game and blah blah blah.
So go down the list. So let's do kineticist.
Okay.
I'll go first. I think kineticist is 4.5 or 5 out of 5.
I give it a 5.
Yeah, I'd probably give it a 4.5. Like 4.75 maybe.
Alright.
If I were to rank Kineticist, it would be my second favorite class.
Oh, wait. We will do rankings afterwards, buddy. First
Okay,
we
fair
do
enough,
ratings,
God,
then
buddy.
we do rankings.
Yeah, wow.
God.
Jesus. God.
Get that lawfulness. And
All right. So, medium, I'm going to say the base class is kind of like a 3, but I like the resurrected medium, I'm going to say it's like a 4.5 just because it's such a cool theme to me.
So overall 4.
I don't know if the reanimated medium is enough to pull it up.
Yeah.
But like reanimated medium 4.5, base medium 3.
I'll give it a 3.5.
It's like a 2
classic,
for
right?
me. It is.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a 2. I'll put it as a 2.
All right, mesmerist.
I'll give it a 3.
Again, 2 base class. I'm gonna say 4.45 vexing daredevil, which is the blade dancer class.
Buddy.
Yeah.
And also a couple of the like occult master gets pretty high up there.
Yeah.
Too.
0?
Wow.
Both of them, I hate it. I think it's bad. It's like I dislike it more than the Scald. I dislike it more than every other class in the advanced class guide.
I mean, it's not surprising that you dislike it more than the Scald, since the Scald's the best class.
Shut up, Mango.
Oh my god, Mango,
okay,
kill yourself.
Scald is the only 0 class in the game that Paizo's
If you're rating from -100 to 0.
No.
I mean, Unchained, not Unchained. I mean, baseline Summoner is also a 0 for me. It's
Yeah.
I would never allow
You know,
I don't think baseline summoner is 0. In fact,
I'd give it a 1. I wouldn't give it a 0.
See, I think baseline summoner is a decent.
It's a good idea. It's just the execute. It's the
my favorite thing to do with favorite thing to do with baseline summoner is to make
the noob class.
What's the bear suit one?
Nicolas Cage.
No. What is the archetype? The broken
synthesis. Oh god, that's a negative.
If you're playing with a bunch of power gamers, you give your noob a synthesis and they compete, and I love that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I just think it's poorly designed, and I don't think it has enough flavor to support it. Right? Like, I just would never take it in one of my games. Plus, there's an Unchained version of it that's just better all around.
Back
to the occult classes.
Yeah. Fuck Mesmerist. I mean, the reason that I say this about the Mesmerist is really I can't get behind that flavor. Right? It will never be within my suspension of disbelief that this hypnotist guy is implanting hypnotic suggestions among his party members, right? That's just bad flavor that will not...
This sounds like how you sound about the shaman. Like, the shaman isn't what you... Like, the type of shaman that you like.
Yeah, it's the exact same.
So
Well,
you don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, that might be kind of fair.
The
shaman
doesn't
too.
really shatter my suspension of disbelief the same way that I'm trying to describe. I just can't believe a mesmerist, right?
Okay.
It just fundamentally doesn't make sense in my worldview of what I think of as Pathfinder.
All right, so
right?
Buddy's closed-minded.
Anyway,
moving on.
That's where we think about it.
All right.
Occultist. I'm going to say it's a solid 4 for me.
Yeah, I'll give it a 4. 4 or 5.
I'm right there with you. Straight up 4.
All right, psychic. I'm gonna say 4.55.
4.55.
Yeah.
So far.
Or like no, a 4.5 or somewhere up there.
I think the occult
like it is
like
a
4,
good
4,
class.
5. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think my psychic is definitely a 5. I think it's the.
I'll give the psychic a 4. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and it is pretty good. It's just not that different from the sorcerer for me.
All right, and spiritualist.
I give it a 1.
I'm gonna give it a solid 3 because I read it once and didn't think about it again. I was like, that's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's 100% middle of the pack 3. If somebody wants to play it, great. Otherwise, hey, whatever.
All right.
Kind of.
So, what are the rankings then? I'll go first.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna go. Kineticist, psychic, reanimated medium, occultist, medium, mesmerist, spiritualist.
Yeah, I'll do kineticist, occultist, medium, mesmerist, psychic, spiritualist. And that's like not against the psychic. It's just like the spiritualist is the only one that I don't really like, and I think that the mesmerist adds more to the game, or has the potential to add more to the game than the psychic does.
That's fair.
My breakdown is psychic to kineticist to occultist to spiritualist to medium to mesmerist.
Okay.
All right. Well, there's a little something for everyone in this book.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah.
Moral of the story: if
Except
you like
for-
X-Files,
Are there? I mean, a good. I think another good baseline. Are there any of these classes that you would like hardcore ban? In your games.
No. But that's how I
Not
run
really.
my games.
I
Yeah, well,
probably
fair enough, I
wouldn't
suppose.
like if I was going to go through and like start re-editing things again. I'd probably not let people play spiritualists, but that's it. The rest of them are fine. Maybe
Okay,
not
fair
the mesmerist.
No.
You know,
Yeah. Is there anything you'd ban?
Well, yeah, mesmerist.
You'd ban it?
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't let anybody. If they took the right archetype, maybe I would let it go. I do like Vexing Daredevil a lot. I liked one.
buddy.
other
What if
one
I wanted to play a mesmerist?
that I can't remember? Let me look it up.
What if we all played Mesmerists and House Rebels?
Can I multi-class into
Cult
Tau?
Master. Yeah, so Cult Master, and Vexing Daredevil were both pretty good. I like those a lot.
All right, so we're all going to play Mesmerists and House Rebels.
Well, I want to multi-class
We're,
into
we're
Tau.
all, we're all
Oh,
going to
Christ.
accept each other.
Oh, fuck me.
I psychic duel him. Well, I psychic duel him while he's psychic dueling. Okay.
Our party's greatest weakness: opposing parties with at least one more character than we have.
Oh
Oh my god. That one. Oh, this is giving me cancer. Anyway.
All right.
Just the idea.
Well, I'm Mark. It was great to guest star.
Yeah, no. So yeah, you should check Mark out when he runs them Rise of the Rune Lords games at Some Derps Play or twitch.tv/Some Derps Play Games. If you have your own comments about the Occult Adventures Handbook and you would like to write to us to let us know how right or wrong we are, we can be found at somederpsplaygames@gmail.com. You can also comment on the SoundCloud.
I think that this is a pretty neat little archetype for some of our episodes. So if you'd like us to review some other books,
Please submit. Yeah.
please let us know. We'll bring Mark on. I'm sure he has opinions. Do ACG so that I can complain about the Skald and the Shaman.
Yeah.
I can
Let's
explain
like.
why the best class
Yeah.
The
Also.
worst classes ever.
Also,
No, I'm
before I
kidding.
forget the psychic lich, I didn't get to quite
Okay.
orgasm over that enough. But so instead of a phylactery, you make your own mind space. Like you make your own mindscape, and they have to destroy that to kill you. Otherwise, you go back to it and reform. So you incept yourself and are unable to die.
That's wow. That sounds like the worst thing I've ever heard.
I know, right? That's amazing. I'd love to throw that at people.
I
Just
know
be like,
you would
oh.
love to. I know you would. I would feel horrible doing that to my players. Especially, could you imagine doing that when none of them are psychics? Like, none of them have a psychic
Yeah,
spell list?
no, that's the
How
that's
would
the
they
best
do
part
that?
because they're like, oh my god, why?
I would just, if I was a player, I would just be like, well, I guess we're just leaving. Like,
Well,
fucking,
we'll deal with
yeah,
him when he
I'm
comes
gonna
back
go,
in 7 days.
I'm
Did
gonna
you
go
guys know-
tell the fucking.
That
Did
actually,
you know that
there,
Rise of
and
the
I'm
Rune Lords
leaving.
was about psychic witches?
yeah. Did you know that the return of the Rune Lords is basically predicated on them emerging from their own psychic mindscape?
Oh, Christ.
It's
Oh,
a metaphor
man.
for coming out of the closet. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah,
it's been
yeah.
fun.
All right, so this has been Some Derps Talk About Games. Check us out, twitch.tv/Some Derps Play Games. And email us at somederpsplaygames@gmail.com, either about the episodes or about the streams. Watch Iron Gods on Tuesdays, which will be concluding soon. So get caught up or not, and just wait for Hell's Rebels to start. And Rune Lords on usually Mondays.
Usually Mondays, sometimes Wednesdays. Who knows?
Who knows?
It's whenever you want it.
Yeah.
Any
Any
the
way
way
you
you
want
need
it,
it.
that's the way
You
you
need
need
it.
it. Oh,
All
man.
right, farewell.
Farewell, dear listeners.
listeners.